Hey all, Flame here, and welcome to an admittedly simpler than usual end of year video for FlameHisWorld. I will say it's gonna be simpler than usual because I've been kind of busy this last couple of weeks, and so I haven't quite had the amount of time I usually like to invest in these things. But nevertheless, I do still have some stuff to talk about here, and that includes the playthroughs that have happened this year on FlameHisWorld, and some other stuff that's been going on alongside it elsewhere that you might be interested in, or not, depending on how much you care about this one boring British guy and what he does with his life. I don't know. But anyway, let's get right onto the FlameHisWorld playthroughs from 2018. Up first this year was Journey, and that's a beautiful game that I'm really glad I got around to playing and then covering on the channel. It was a game that I will admit my commentary was quite basic. Similar to my Abzu playthrough, it was very much a case of like pointing at the beautiful thing on the screen and saying, look, it's beautiful, and then kind of gushing over how gorgeous the game looks and how immersive it is, which I realise isn't the most substantial commentary in the world. I think people tend to prefer if I were to bring more to the table. I don't know, maybe not. But it was fun to cover, and I do still kind of like how that playthrough came out. Maybe it's not quite as ingrained in my mind as a good playthrough as like Abzu was last year, if only because it was kind of like, that was me gushing over a game last year. Here's me gushing over another game this year. Like, maybe I was sort of retreading my ground, but like, Journey is an absolutely gorgeous game in its own right, and I hope I did a good job at showing that off in the playthrough. Next up is Mega Man 4 Game Boy. If you remember last year, I did Dr. Wily's Revenge, Mega Man 2 Game Boy, and Mega Man 3 Game Boy. I was originally planning to cover all 5 of the Game Boy Mega Man games last year, and I kind of, don't really want to say burnt myself out on it, but I was worried of becoming a little bit repetitive, so I decided to space them out a bit more across 2 years rather than just one. So this year I did continue on with the series and do Mega Man 4 Game Boy. I like the game for what it is, and I think the commentary was okay. Admittedly, there's only so much I can bring to the table for the 4th game in a series of very similarly structured games, and I realise that's always going to be a bit of a downfall when it comes to my Mega Man LPs, but you know, I played the game pretty well with save states obviously and with resets, but like good enough to show the game off in a playthrough, and like my commentary, it was okay. You know, that Mega Man 4 Game Boy is an okay commentary to me, so could have been better, could have been worse. After that was a live LP, and the first live LP of the year, that being Entwined. Now, Entwined, I kind of decided to do that as a spur of the moment thing. I think I was just not in the greatest of moods at that particular point in time, and I just wanted to just sit down and have a game that I can just relax to, and I think my commentary was a lot more laid back, like even more so than usual in the Entwined LP, and whether that's good or bad, that's obviously a subjective thing. I kind of like doing it. I do like Entwined as a game, so the fact I was able to indulge in the ambient mood that it brings with it, I just, you know, I was kind of in my element there. I have 2 flavours of choice when it comes to games I've noticed. I like either the gotta go fast stuff, like your Sonic or your racing games, or I like the let's zoom it back, let's just chill, let's just play something calming, and Entwined is definitely the latter. And so I did get a little bit real talk during one of the parts, I seem to remember, and just my more reserved commentary paired with the ambient acoustic music and the sort of gentle colours on the screen, it created its own experience. And you know, it may not be the most exciting LP in the world, and I realise that kind of thing isn't for everyone, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm especially glad I did it because that was a game that I actually did a stream playthrough of last year during the Hellfire Comes SonyThon, and I did originally consider putting that playthrough up on the channel like I did with the Heavy Rain one, but like an idiot, I forgot to record it locally, so the only option would have been to have ripped the Twitch version, which I didn't really want to do, because Entwined is an absolutely gorgeous looking game, and the developers of the game are clearly gone out of their way to craft the game's visuals a very specific way, and I think that just ripping a live stream recording of that wouldn't really have done the game the justice that I wanted to give it. And so I never bothered last year, and this year that's kind of why it was an open slot for an LP that I could just pick up as I felt like playing it. I think that's probably for the best in retrospect, because I think the commentary for this new version came out better than the commentary for the live stream version. So it's sort of all worked out well in the end, at least as far as Let's Plays of the game Entwined on YouTube go. After Entwined, I went back to Game Boy Mega Man with the final game in this series, Mega Man 5. And this one, I seem to remember having quite a bit of trouble recording this one. Not for technical reasons, but just for the sake of getting a good takedown for the commentary. Not so much the gameplay. The gameplay was just like the usual, play it with an emulator. If I fuck up too bad, I can just reload the last save and try again. But no, the commentary, I was really running out of shit to talk about. And it probably shows in the final videos. I seem to recall being far more reliant on notes than I was in the earlier ones, and I was more going back to stuff that I'd researched beforehand. Some of it was really arsepull, like, you know, oh, these robots are named after planets, so let's pull up some trivia about the planets they're named after. Like, it fills time, and maybe it was interesting to some people, maybe not, but, you know, I don't think it was the best LP in the world. And the fact that I had entire parts that I just scrapped entirely. Usually when it comes to retakes for me, I usually just like cut out a few minutes that are a bit shit from a part and then just fill it in with something more interesting. But no, I remember I had an entire half-hour part of Mega Man 5 Game Boy that I just watched back as I was editing it together and was like, this is actually boring. So I just chucked everything and redid the whole video. I think that may have hindered it a little bit. The take I used was definitely better than the original take, but just the fact that I was basically retreading the same ground, it shows, at least to me. I don't know whether it shows to someone who wasn't involved in the recording process or not. I can't really see from that perspective. But, you know, the playthrough overall, not the worst. I've done much worse years back, but I think it makes me reconsider doing entire series of games in a short time. That was admittedly a kind of experiment thing with the Mega Man Game Boy games. I weren't sure whether it would work out well or whether it wouldn't. And I think 1 through 4, aside from a few rough sections here and there, they were competent LPs. They were hopefully entertaining. I enjoyed making them. 5, parts of it were a little bit phoned in, admittedly, and that's kind of, I guess, what happens when I put myself in a position where I have to finish an LP. And I don't think I'll be doing that kind of approach with Let's Plays anytime soon again. Like, if I'm not really into it, I don't really see the point in forcing it, if that makes sense. But there's one more complete playthrough that's up on the channel, and that is the other live playthrough that I did this year that's just wrapped up at the time this going up. The video went up live earlier today, and that is Mario Kart 7. This one was kind of a last minute thing, I will admit. It was a case of, well, we still have a run ongoing with Chris and Stephen, so I didn't really want to dedicate one of our recording sessions to doing a different Mario Kart game when we still have a lot of Pokemon Y to cover, which I'll get to after this, don't worry. But I still wanted to show off a Mario Kart game because it's become a kind of trend for the last couple of years that towards the end of a year, FlameHisWorld would have a Mario Kart game. Like, we had Double Dash in 2016, and then we had my Mirror Mode run of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe last year. So I was kind of in the mood to do a Mario Kart run, but didn't want to just drag the guys away from Pokemon Y for a while and just use up another recording session, which are kind of sacred as they are. So I just sort of did another live run of me going through Mario Kart 7. I think that actually came out okay. I'm always a little bit nervous with live runs about how they're going to come out because I can't really do as much patching up after the fact as I can with the post-commentary ones. So if I were to have a bad take, then I've either got to redo the whole thing or just man man up and deal with it. Like, I don't really have a middle ground where I can tweak little bits, because then it will all go out of sync or it'll sound really fake or some shit like that, you know? It wouldn't be the best experience in the world. So I kind of have to accept the sacrifices, but to kind of make up for that, they do tend to be a lot more lively than my solo post-commentary runs. I tend to be a little bit more in the zone of the game. Like, there's a few parts during that run where I was getting twatted by items and whatnot, and I was really, like, legitimately getting into it. Like, the parts where I'm just sort of reacting to stuff that's happening on the screen and that weren't played up. That is just literally how I tend to be when I'm getting myself in that mind frame of playing the game. Granted, I vocalise it a lot more when I'm recording, because if I was just talking to myself for no reason as I'm playing the game, that'd be a little bit weird, you know? But, like, that was kind of fun to put that together as a playthrough. And so, like, you know, it's a pretty decent LP to wrap up the end of the year with, I think, if I do say so myself. I'm doing the thing patting myself on the back, which, you know, I have the two extremes, either that or I hate it. And so I'd rather take this, if I'm being honest. But as per the norm, I do very much appreciate feedback, whether that's positive or negative. So if you have any favourites or least favourites in terms of runs I've done either this year or overall, please do let me know what you think. I may not always agree with everything. I do still have my own approach to recording playthroughs and content in general, but I am always open to other people's ideas as to how to approach things. So feel free to leave a comment, feel free to just message me about stuff if you have any opinions to share or any suggestions and whatnot. But yeah, that's it for the runs that I completed this year. But of course, there is still an ongoing run that will carry over into 2019, and that is Pokemon Y. And that run, it's taking its sweet time, I am aware of that. Like, we get a few parts like every month or so, and then it goes on break for a few weeks. And I realise that's not ideal. But when it comes to scheduling that around my other projects, which I have to admit have to become higher priorities for certain reasons, sometimes Pokemon Y does sort of fall down a bit. It sometimes doesn't get prioritized as high as it ideally could be. But as for the parts that are up so far, I quite like it. I always have a good time talking about Pokemon with Chris and Stephen. We have a few laughs, and it's going to be interesting going back to it in our next recording session, because through the last few parts I was sort of shit talking Pokemon Let's Go before it came out, and now I've since played Let's Go, now it's out, and I actually really liked it. So that's going to make for something interesting to talk about. But, you know, overall it's going well so far, and I hope it continues well and we wrap it up in 2019. So yeah, that's all the FlameHisWorld stuff covered. On top of that, I've also been doing stuff for my non-commentary channel, FC Playthroughs. That has become my priority this year in terms of just what I dedicate the most time for. And this is the part where I have to take the more cynical description of doing YouTube stuff, because I obviously enjoy doing this from the way I've talked about the playthroughs, and I do really like recording gameplay for FC playthroughs. My ideal situation would be that I can split my attention like 50-50 between them, but that's not going to happen realistically here, because, and this is a thing to do with my own personal life right now, but FC Playthroughs is a partnered channel. So that means that I do get a bit of money from it each month. I'm in a position where I don't want to just be sitting here unemployed all the time. If I can make that bring in a bit of money, even if it's just something to help pay towards house bills and all the shit that as an adult I probably should have been doing for years, but I'm actually a man child, so I haven't. I would kind of have to dedicate more of my time to the thing that makes me money. And I know that sounds really cynical to describe it like that. And I wish that I could just, you know, carry on doing this hobby stuff entirely 50-50 and cover both bases. But when I'm kind of having to make myself useful in my household, I'm going to prioritize the one that helps me do that. I feel like it's not impossible to increase the output for FlameHisWorld next year. I feel like with a bit of discipline, I might be able to get more stuff going on this channel. But you know, that's like my reasoning for why it's been so lopsided this year. Maybe it'll pick up a bit next year now that I've got FC playthroughs going and there's a consistent streak of content going up on that. Maybe I'll be able to give myself a bit more time off from that so that I can get a couple of FlameHisWorld runs put up here and there. I'd like to do that. Obviously, that's a play it by ear situation, so we'll see how that goes. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'm trying to be useful in the real world while also pursuing my hobbies, which is the commentary stuff. And I'm a man-child trying to be an adult, and it's kind of showing a lot of the time, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm rambling now. So that's basically what's happened. FC playthroughs is my priority and FlameHisWorld is my little hobby side project. So that means there won't be quite as much quantity for FlameHisWorld as there is for FC playthroughs. But I'm not going to just abandon it entirely either, just because this is still my baby. I love FlameHisWorld. I'm glad that I have this channel and this platform to just have fun with. There's also other stuff I've done this year on Hellfire Comms, which I'm sure if you go over to that channel, you can see what's going on there for yourself. So I won't spend too long on this, but I've done a few runs. Like I was in the Super Mario Odyssey run. I recorded footage for the Sonic 8-bit games and Sonic Adventure 2, Pokemon Colosseum, Sonic Chronicles. I was also in Detroit Become Human. So I've done a few bits over there. I would recommend checking out those runs if you want to see what I think are pretty decent runs. Obviously, we still have Sonic Chronicles ongoing. That will continue in the new year. That's only being delayed because I swear that playthrough is fucking cursed when it comes to us trying to record. Because we've had a couple of recording sessions where someone was ill or someone had something else come up, and so we had to put that off. We've also had recording sessions where we were having technical issues, and like it'll get done eventually, but emphasis on the eventually there. That playthrough is still ongoing for a reason, and we'll wrap it up in January. So I hope you have enjoyed the parts I've gone up so far, and I hope you continue to enjoy it as we conclude it. One last thing I do want to give a shout out to, because I said this would be a simple video, but I've been going for nearly 20 minutes here, so I'll wrap it up here. That is at the end of January, going into February, on the 28th of January, we're starting our next Hellfire Comms charity event, and that is going to be the Retrothon. We've got a schedule set out now, which we haven't publicly released yet, but we've got quite a few retro games. We're covering stuff like old console games, some old handheld like Game Boy and Game Gear stuff. We're covering some old PC games, and that's all going to be raising money for Child's Play Again, the charity we've raised money for the last couple of marathons. I'll be sharing more information about that as and when we've got stuff ready to go, but like I say, starting 28th of January, and hopefully we can raise a bunch more money for the kids. So keep an eye out for that. I'll leave a link to the Hellfire Comms Twitch page where that will be taking place. So you can go check out the channel, follow it, and you'll get the notifications when the marathon goes live. And hopefully, if you're able to, you'll be able to make a donation to the children. So I look forward to that, actually. Like the charity marathons are some of my highlights when it comes to this kind of stuff. So that will be fun. I think that will do me for this little aimless ramble. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been the Flameclaw, and I hope you have a fantastic 2019. Happy New Year, everyone.